Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Inside Out Smile. I'm your host, Dr. Amber Q, and sometimes I have to confess that sometimes I find it hard to articulate how I feel. And by that really I'm referring to the last year and what's happening, because it's just so strange that some people are just carrying on with their normal lives and other people are just so affected by what is happening, as we should be. But I know that I have listeners from all over the world, so welcome if you're in Sweden and the USA. So let me tell you a little story. I was speaking with my American friend the other day, and she was telling me how her sister had gone to a second home, which is in a different state. And she was commenting that the news was like so skewed. It was just really bizarre. And I think it was referring to the news sort of program that she'd been referring to was speaking about not just international matters, but domestic matters as well. So it shows you how people are just given limited information. But obviously we are living in the era of information. And I feel that some people, I speak to some people and they're so distressed and worried and upset, and rightly so, because we're witnessing the slaughter of innocents. And then you get people who just, who just don't really seem affected by it at all. They're indifferent. And I feel that it's really important to speak about this, because I was listening to Dr. Miriam Francois, and she's always so eloquent. And she was basically saying that a new precedent has been set, because when you, I guess, abuse people, in terrible ways, where you're ignoring international law and you're sort of, unaliving babies and journalists and doctors and things, that has an impact. And that's why I felt that it was important actually to discuss this, because I've been thinking about that myself, about how for some people they're just carrying on as normal. And especially, it's the start of the festive season. And honestly, some people just seem to be in their own world, planning parties and festivities. But why am I talking about this? Why is this indifference dangerous? And I think it's dangerous for a number of reasons. So the first reason, of course, is that if people don't, care about what is happening in terms of a genocide, it really just sets a dangerous, precedent that violence is okay. We're kind of then normalizing it, saying, oh, that's okay, it's not on my door, that's fine. I think that's really dangerous. Then obviously when we have apathy, it, means that generally, and I'm not saying everyone, of course, but, there's kind of, desensitization in society. And again, that's a tolerance of violence. And obviously this has a social and political impact. So governments might be like, oh, we're not going to provide aid, So I feel that it's just a really slippery slope. And the thing is, why do people kind of behave like that? And I think the thing is that there are a number of reasons. There are a few things actually I studied in psychology. And the thing is that some people do ignore sort of atrocities and just evil things because there are a variety of psychological factors. I remember studying about the bystander effect. And basically, this is when people are less likely to help a victim because they're just kind of like, oh, someone else is going to help. Someone else will sort it out. You get this in medical emergencies as well, which is why you always have to assume that, that people haven't actually called for help. And that's called the bystander effect. But the thing is, if we're looking at a genocide, people are assuming that, the UN's going to do something or various countries are going to do something. So I guess there's that. Then of course we know there is the misinformation and all of the rubbish that people have been fed and that are still being fed by Western media. So there's that as well. And I think some people are kind of like, well, what can we do? But there are lots of things that we can do. And although, yes, we are not government, but boycotting works, protesting works, because then governments, they have to listen to their people. Although I'm not sure what's happening in the States, if I'm honest. But also, I think, it's just not normal to be seeing, oh my God, to be seeing this. And, you see families, it's so weird because you see families just begging for help and they're in this awful, just in displaced tents and things like that. And it's just really awful. But I think it's so important because we've got to stop our hearts from becoming, I guess, desensitized, really, because obviously it's so distressing to see. And I think, of course, you have to look after your mental health, but you've got to kind of be able to maintain empathy, so to prevent the apathy. And, why am I talking about all of this? Because I do feel that we have a moral responsibility to be aware, and we need to spread awareness. And if you'd like to spread awareness, there are lots of things that you can do, whether it's doing that on social media, just through conversations with people, giving a voice and amplifying underrepresented Palestinian voices, putting pressure on policymakers. Obviously in the States at the moment, they're kind of going through their election, and and just so many organizations like Genocide Watch and Amnesty International and things like that. But I mean, the thing is that we need to maintain our empathy, because empathy is linked to altruism. And when we understand someone's suffering, it's going to be more likely that we're going to be able to engage in altruistic behavior. And the thing is, how would we like it if that was happening to us? It's vital that we stay informed, we share knowledge, we support movements that are dedicated to preventing and responding to acts of genocide. And I know there are terrible things happening in other places. I'm not sure what's happening with Congo at the moment, but I know things are bad in Sudan as well. But I mean, there's got to be collective resistance against apathy, because otherwise, silence is actually being complicit. And I feel like I was thinking, why am I talking about this today? And I think the thing is, you just see such awful images. It's just heartbreaking. And then I saw an image of somebody at a protest screaming at a child. And when I say a child, like we're talking about a 6-year-old or something. And this woman was screaming at this child, and the caption, I can't repeat it here, but she was basically saying to the child, I don't care about the children who are dying and things like that. And I'm just kind of like, who says things like that? What kind of people say things like that? And so I think the thing is that I don't care that the festive season is coming up. I mean, I don't celebrate Christmas anyway because I'm a Muslim. But the point is, and I know I always say this, and I know I have listeners all over the world, but please educate yourself. And if you're up to date with things, please educate others in, in learning about the ongoing genocide. And, there are loads of resources for that. You can look anywhere and everywhere. You can look on the BDS website. You can look on Medical Aid for Palestine, just anything and everything out there. Just do a Google search, and amplify the voices, share the stories of the people, the survivors and those who are affected. I know that there's so many amputees and the people that have been able to escape, they will need help because they've escaped with nothing. So raise their voices. If you can't donate, please just raise their voices. Support organizations, charities and groups that are helping. We've got to just encourage people to stay informed. We've got to try and stop it, because at the end of the day, it doesn't just affect people that are, far away. It does impact global stability, human rights, and our collective humanity. So if you think it's not going to affect you, it is. And I go back to what I was saying in the beginning about Dr. Myriam Francois, who was saying that, there's a very dangerous precedent that has been set where people who should be protected under international law, whether it's doctors, journalists, babies, women, etc., that's kind of, there's been a new, dangerous precedent set, basically. So believe me, it does affect you. And if you can't see that, then, as she said, you don't know what's at stake. So I don't know. I know I always say this, and I know that my listeners, you must be wonderful people, because if you're here listening to me just blabber on, I don't know, I'm just so affected by obviously what's happening and hearing people's stories. And I don't know, it's just so awful. It's I can't even contemplate it, let alone, they're living it, they're experiencing it. Oh my gosh, I don't know, it doesn't even bear thinking about, but yet we can't bear to think about it or to look at it, and they're actually living it. We need to help. We need to do what we can. It's, our hearts and our humanity are at stake. Now, I know I have listeners, as I was saying, from Sweden, the United States, but my wonderful listeners who are in Brazil, Canada, the UK, Qatar, Bangladesh, China, even Australia. It's crazy, isn't it? Russia as well, and Germany, Serbia, Denmark, France, Belgium, Argentina, Mexico, Norway, Uzbekistan, the Czech Republic. They're just, everywhere. You guys are everywhere. And there's so many amazing people. Like, the masks have really come off. And, who's going to be on the right side of humanity? That is the question. And you, my dear listeners, I know you're wonderful people. And you're not wonderful because you're listening to me blabbering on, but you're wonderful because you've got beautiful hearts. And so until the next episode, let's all create connection with others so that we can help educate them, so that they can learn and we can learn from them to see why they are silent. And let's not just change lives, but save lives.